Liam Sterling stood on the polished concrete floor of what was supposed to be his masterpiece. At 42, his life, in Denver, Colorado, was a meticulously constructed edifice of ambition and innovation. His architectural firm, Summit Designs, co-founded with his longtime friend and business partner Chloe Vance, was a rising star in the sustainable commercial architecture scene. Their latest triumph, the eco-friendly redesign of the historic Union Station Annex, was poised to be their defining project, one that would not only redefine urban revitalization, but also cement Liam's legacy as a visionary in green building. The Union Station Annex wasn't just another commission. It was a passion project, born from countless late nights, discarded sketches, and the relentless pursuit of blending historical preservation with cutting-edge environmental technology. Liam had poured his soul into every detail, from the geothermal heating systems to the integrated vertical gardens that would breathe life into the building's facade. It was a symphony of his deepest convictions. Design could be both beautiful and responsible, connecting the past with a sustainable future. The initial concept, a sprawling complex of interconnected public spaces and high-tech offices, had been his entirely. Chloe, with her sharp project management skills and charismatic client relations, was the perfect complement, translating his artistic vision into compelling pitches that won over city councils and preservation societies alike. Today was the day of the final review, with the city's Historic Preservation Board and the primary investors. The culmination of 4 years of relentless work, it represented the largest, most visible contract Summit Designs had ever pursued. Liam, usually a whirlwind of nervous energy before such high-stakes meetings, felt an unusual calm. He had reviewed the comprehensive architectural plans, the detailed energy consumption models, and the meticulously crafted financial projections a dozen times. Every contingency was accounted for. Every potential challenge had a solution. This was it. He adjusted the sleeves of his tailored gray suit, a subtle nod to the professional gravitas he carried. His dark, neatly trimmed hair was slightly tousled from running his hands through it during late-night revisions, but his blue eyes, usually alight with a creative spark, held a serious, focused glint. As he walked through the nearly completed annex, the hum of finishing touches around him felt like a well-oiled machine, each cog working in perfect synchronicity. Construction workers put the final touches on interior fixtures, their voices a low murmur of coordinated effort. This was his world, a world he had built beam by beam, panel by panel. Chloe met him at the entrance to the main presentation hall, a wide, confident smile on her face. She was dressed impeccably, as always, her blonde hair pulled back in a chic ponytail. "Ready for the grand unveiling, Liam?" she asked, her voice smooth and reassuring. She clapped him on the shoulder, a familiar gesture of camaraderie that had always felt solid, dependable. "As I'll ever be," Liam replied, a genuine smile touching his lips. "You've got the updated sustainability metrics, right? Just the minor tweaks we made last night?" "Of course," Chloe said, patting her sleek tablet. "All buttoned up. Don't worry, Liam. This is a slam dunk. The board practically signed off on it last week." Her confidence was infectious, and Liam felt a surge of excitement. They had worked tirelessly for this. The Union Station Annex project wasn't just a career milestone. It was a personal triumph, a symbol of their shared vision and enduring partnership. Chloe and he had been friends since their university days, kindred spirits who bonded over late-night design critiques and shared dreams of reshaping cityscapes. Their professional relationship had grown organically from that foundation of trust and mutual respect. She was the pragmatic anchor to his artistic flights of fancy, the grounded manager to his imaginative architect. They were an unstoppable team. The review meeting was held in the annex's newly finished, sun-drenched atrium, a space designed to showcase the building's natural light and sustainable features. The air was thick with anticipation as Liam and Chloe took their places at the large, reclaimed wood table, facing the distinguished members of the board and the lead investors. Mr. Thorne, the stern but fair-minded chairman of the Historic Preservation Board, offered a polite nod. Chloe began the presentation, her voice resonating with her usual persuasive charm. She walked the board through the initial vision, the conceptual sketches, the environmental impact assessments, and the community engagement plans. Liam watched her, a quiet sense of pride swelling within him. She was a master orator, capable of weaving a narrative that captivated her audience. As she spoke, she gestured to the stunning 3D renderings projected onto the large screen, images that brought Liam's vision to life with breathtaking clarity. The lush vertical gardens, the sun-drenched public spaces, the seamlessly integrated solar arrays. It was all there, vivid and compelling. Then, it was Liam's turn to delve into the technical specifics, the innovative structural elements, the cutting-edge sustainable technologies, the intricate material choices. He spoke with a quiet authority, his passion for the project evident in every carefully chosen word. He answered their questions with precision, anticipating their concerns and offering thoughtful solutions. The board members and investors listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to genuine interest, and finally, to admiration. As he concluded his segment, he glanced at Chloe, expecting her usual approving nod, the silent signal that they were in sync. But Chloe wasn't looking at him. His gaze was fixed on Mr. Thorne, a subtle, almost imperceptible smirk playing on her lips. A flicker of unease, cold and unwelcome, brushed against Liam. He dismissed it as pre-presentation jitters, a lingering anxiety from the immense pressure of the moment. The Q&A session went smoothly. The board members and investors seemed genuinely impressed, their questions turning from critical inquiries to enthusiastic explorations of the project's potential. Mr. Thorne leaned forward, a rare smile gracing his features. "Mr. Sterling, Miss Vance," he began, his voice carrying a note of finality. "The board and our investors are thoroughly impressed. This proposal, it's truly groundbreaking. We've reviewed many submissions over the past few months, but yours stands head and shoulders above the rest." Liam's heart soared. This was it. The culmination of years of hard work, of dreams, of unwavering dedication. However, Mr. Thorne continued, and the single word hung in the air, chilling Liam to the bone. The sudden shift in his tone was palpable, a discordant note in the symphony of their success. Liam's eyes darted to Chloe, whose expression remained oddly neutral, almost expectant. "We have received an updated proposal," Mr. Thorne stated, his gaze now fixed on Chloe. "One that, while retaining the core innovative concepts, offers a more streamlined approach to the project's execution and, more importantly, a significantly reduced budget without compromising the integrity of the design." Liam's breath hitched. An updated proposal? Without his knowledge? A cold dread began to coil in his stomach. He looked at Chloe, his eyes silently pleading for an explanation, for her to clarify this sudden, unsettling turn of events. But Chloe avoided his gaze, her attention solely on Mr. Thorne. "Miss Vance," Mr. Thorne continued, "your revised submission, presented to us just yesterday, addresses several of our lingering concerns regarding scalability and long-term maintenance. We understand this was a last-minute adjustment, but the board finds it incredibly compelling." Liam felt the blood drain from his face. Her revised submission? Last night? He hadn't made any revisions. They had finalized everything hours before. A sharp, icy realization began to form in his mind, a monstrous, unthinkable truth. Chloe finally turned to him, her smile now a thin, almost apologetic line. "Liam, I apologize for the surprise. I felt it was crucial to present the most competitive offer possible. The board had some reservations, and I worked through the night to address them." Her voice was calm, almost too calm, laced with a practiced sincerity that suddenly felt like a venomous lie. "What are you talking about, Chloe?" Liam's voice was barely a whisper, laced with a growing horror. "We finalized the proposal. There were no further revisions." Mr. Thorne interjected, his voice firm. "Mr. Sterling, Miss Vance presented a comprehensive, fully updated proposal yesterday evening. It outlines a revised architectural approach, a rephased construction timeline, and a significantly optimized financial model. All under the Summit Designs banner, of course." He paused, then added, "We were particularly impressed with the ingenuity of the structural modifications, Miss Vance. Truly remarkable." The words hit Liam like a physical blow. Structural modifications? Those were his most recent, cutting-edge innovations, ideas he had only shared with Chloe in their private discussions, concepts he had been refining for months, still unintegrated into the official proposal. She had taken his intellectual property, his very essence, and presented it as her own. The room began to spin. The faces of the board members and investors blurred into an indistinguishable mass. His vision, his dream, his legacy, stolen. Not by a competitor, but by the woman who had stood by his side for 15 years. The woman he had trusted implicitly. The woman who was supposed to be his partner. "Chloe," Liam managed, his voice shaking with a mixture of disbelief and burgeoning rage. "What have you done?" Chloe finally met his gaze, and in her eyes, Liam saw not remorse, but a cold, calculated ambition he had never truly perceived. Liam, she said, her voice dropping to a low, almost conspiratorial tone. This is business. Sometimes you have to make difficult decisions for the greater good of the firm. You were too sentimental about the original design. I merely streamlined it. Streamlined it? She had gutted his soul and presented it as her own. The betrayal was a searing brand on his heart, an agony far deeper than any professional setback. It wasn't just the project, it was the shattering of a friendship, the obliteration of trust, the violent dismantling of his entire professional identity. Mr. Thorne cleared his throat, seemingly oblivious to the silent, devastating war unfolding between the two partners. Well then, Mr. Sterling, miss? Vance, he announced, a triumphant smile now firmly in place. It is with great pleasure that the board officially awards the contract for the redevelopment of the Union Station Annex to Summit Designs. We look forward to a successful collaboration. Liam heard the words, but they sounded distant, muffled, as if he were underwater. The congratulations, the polite applause, the satisfied murmurs of the board members, it all faded into a deafening roar in his ears. He felt a cold, hollow ache spread through his chest, a void where his trust, his dreams, and his future had once resided. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the polished floor, drawing startled glances from the board. He didn't care. His eyes were fixed on Chloe, who now looked slightly uncomfortable, a faint flush rising on her cheeks. "You absolute viper," Liam whispered, his voice raw with emotion, though it was barely audible above the polite chatter. He didn't wait for a response. He couldn't. The air in the room felt suffocating, poisoned by her deceit. He turned and walked out, his steps stiff and deliberate, leaving behind the shattered remnants of his career, his partnership, and his trust. As he stepped out of the gleaming annex and onto the bustling streets of downtown Denver, the vibrant city he loved felt alien, hostile. The crisp autumn air, usually invigorating, now felt like a cruel mockery. He walked aimlessly, the sounds of traffic, distant light rail, and chattering pedestrians blending into a cacophony that mirrored the chaos in his mind. His phone buzzed incessantly in his pocket. Probably Chloe, trying to smooth things over, or a concerned investor. He ignored it all. The betrayal was a physical weight, pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Chloe, his friend, his partner, the woman he had shared countless dreams with, celebrated victories with, and confided in during moments of doubt. She had not only stolen his work, but had done so with a chilling, calculated precision, right under his nose, in the very space they had built together. How could he have been so blind? How could he have missed the signs? Had she always been this ruthless, hiding it beneath a veneer of charm and camaraderie? His mind replayed the entire presentation, searching for clues, for any hint of her deception. The subtle smirk, the averted gaze, the overly confident tone, they all clicked into place, forming a grotesque mosaic of her treachery. The Union Station Annex, his masterpiece, was now tainted, a monument to her betrayal. Liam found himself standing by the South Platte River, the murky water flowing steadily beneath a pedestrian bridge. The iconic view of the Denver skyline, usually a comforting sight, now felt like a symbol of division, a chasm between his past and a terrifying, uncertain future. The city lights began to twinkle as dusk settled, but their warmth did nothing to dispel the cold emptiness that had taken root in his soul. Everything he had worked for, everything he had believed in, had been reduced to ashes in a single, devastating moment. He was adrift, anchorless, in a world that suddenly felt entirely foreign. The blueprint of his life, once so perfectly rendered, had been violently torn apart. The crisp Denver autumn air offered no solace to Liam Sterling. He walked aimlessly, the vibrant energy of downtown, usually a source of inspiration and endless possibility, now felt like a cruel, mocking symphony. The distant hum of the light rail, the chatter of tourists at the 16th Street Mall, the easy laughter spilling from brewery patios, it all grated on his raw nerves. He was numb, lost somewhere between disbelief and an overwhelming urge to scream. The betrayal was a physical weight, pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Chloe, his best friend, his partner, the woman he had trusted with everything, who had just systematically dismantled his life's work in front of his eyes. How could this have happened? How could Chloe, the woman he had built Summit Designs with, the woman who had shared his dreams, his struggles, his triumphs, betray him with such cold, calculated precision? Liam's hands clenched into fists, his body rigid with a potent mix of anger, confusion, and a profound sense of loss. The city around him, usually a familiar embrace, now felt vast and indifferent, its iconic skyline cold and distant. He couldn't go back to the firm. Not tonight. He couldn't face the reality of it all. Couldn't look at the space that once felt like a second home, a sanctuary where he poured his soul into designs, now tainted by Chloe's deceit. He wasn't ready to confront Chloe again, to deal with the 1,000 questions that raced through his mind. So, he just walked. Each step was heavy, a testament to the emotional burden he carried. He didn't know where he was going, didn't care. The streets were busy, full of people who seemed to have their lives in order, who weren't stuck in this moment of personal devastation. And then, his mind immediately went to Chloe. The memories flooded back. The countless nights they spent together in their cramped university studio, meticulously planning summit designs, their shared excitement over their first successful bid, how they'd supported each other through every challenge, every design review. Chloe, the woman who had been his closest confidant, the one he had trusted with his vision, his passion, his very future. Now, she felt like a stranger, a venomous viper. How had he not seen the signs? How had he missed the obvious? Had she always been this ruthless, hiding it beneath a veneer of charm and camaraderie? Liam's thoughts spiraled out of control, a vortex of pain and disbelief. Before he knew it, he found himself standing outside a dimly lit, unassuming jazz club in 5 Points, its vintage neon sign flickering erratically. He had no intention of going in, no real desire to drink or socialize, but something about the place felt like a refuge, a dark corner where he could disappear. Inside, the soulful wail of a saxophone and the low murmur of conversation blended into a dull background hum as Liam sat down at the bar, ordering a strong whiskey he barely tasted. As he sipped the burning liquid, he couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Every time he closed his eyes, all he could see was Chloe's face, her practiced sincerity, the cold ambition in her eyes, and then the image of Mr. Thorne, the board chairman, nodding in approval. How could this happen? He stared into his glass, lost in thought, when a voice broke through the fog of his mind. "Liam, is that really you?" Liam turned, surprised to see his older brother Ethan, standing at the end of the bar, looking both concerned and relieved. Ethan, a steady, grounded civil engineer who had always been his rock, felt like a lifeline in the middle of this storm. He had moved to Denver a few years ago, and they saw each other regularly, but he hadn't expected to see him here, now. "Ethan," Liam muttered, his voice hoarse. "What are you doing here?" "I should ask you the same thing," Ethan said, sliding into the seat next to him, his gaze sharp but kind. "I've been trying to reach you. Your phone went straight to voicemail. I heard about Summit Designs. And Chloe." His voice softened, laced with a quiet understanding. Liam took another sip of his drink, trying to compose himself. I don't know where to start, Ethan." Ethan sighed, his hand gently covering his on the bar. "I'm so sorry, Liam. I know how much that project meant to you. And Chloe, I always had my reservations about her. Ruthless efficiency. But I never thought she'd go this far." Liam couldn't bring himself to look at Ethan. His thoughts were still tangled in the mess of what had happened, and no matter how hard he tried, it all came crashing down again. The betrayal, the lies, the fact that Chloe, of all people, had been the one to destroy his life's work. "She stole it, Ethan," Liam said finally, his voice barely a whisper, the words tasting like ash. "My designs, my structural innovations. She presented it as her own, with a revised plan that cut corners on everything I believed in. She admitted it, said I was too sentimental about the original design. She called it business." Ethan's face hardened, his practical nature kicking in. "That's not business, Liam. That's intellectual theft, and betrayal of the highest order." He squeezed his hand. "You're in shock. You don't have to figure everything out right now." "I don't know how to even begin to fix this," Liam replied, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. "I feel like everything I've built has just crumbled. Summit Designs was my life, my identity. I can't go back. I can't face her. What the hell do I do now?" Ethan reached out, placing his other hand on his arm. "You take it one step at a time, Liam. You don't have to have all the answers right now. This is a huge betrayal, and I'm not going to let it's going to take time. But you've got me. You've got Mom and Dad, and we'll be here for you no matter what." Liam nodded, the tears threatening to fall, but he couldn't bring himself to cry. Not here, not in front of Ethan, he thought. The idea of crying felt so foreign now. He had spent so much of his life suppressing his emotions, thinking that tireless work and achieving his architectural dream were the answers to everything. But now, all those achievements felt hollow. Nothing mattered. The only thing that felt real was the anger, the hurt, the betrayal, the hollow emptiness that weighed down on him every moment. "I don't know what to do about Chloe," Liam said, his voice shaking. "She's been my best friend for years. She was there when I first conceptualized Summit Designs. She was there for every late night, every challenge. How could she do this to me? How could I not see it?" Ethan shook his head slowly, his expression pained. "I don't know, Liam. I wish I could explain it. But what matters now is what you do next. You can't control what happened, but you can control how you move forward. You need to get some space from this." Liam took a deep breath, trying to steady his shaking hands. He was angry, but more than that, he was deeply, profoundly hurt. He wasn't sure what the future held. His life, once full of certainty, now felt like a house of cards ready to fall at any moment. The thought of confronting Chloe again filled him with dread. He couldn't face her yet, not when the betrayal was so raw. But Ethan was right, couldn't stay in this place forever, drowning in his grief and anger. "I need to get out of here," Liam muttered, looking up at Ethan, his eyes still clouded with pain. "I can't stay in Denver. Not right now. It's all too much." Ethan nodded. "I have a small cabin up in the Rocky Mountains, near Estes Park. It's remote, quiet. No internet, barely any cell signal. You can crash there for a while. Get away from all this. We'll figure it out. You don't need to be alone in all of this." Liam considered Ethan's offer, feeling a flicker of relief at the thought of a change of scenery, away from the city where everything had fallen apart. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something new. Or maybe it would just give him the time and space he needed to process everything. Either way, he couldn't stay in his old life. Not yet. "Thanks, Ethan," Liam said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "I appreciate it. I don't know what I would do without you right now." Ethan smiled softly, his expression gentle. "You've got me, Liam. And you'll get through this. It'll be hard, but you'll get through it, one day at a time." The drive to Estes Park felt like a journey into another dimension. The bustling highways of Denver slowly receded, replaced by winding mountain roads, flanked by towering pines and snow-capped peaks. The air grew cleaner, crisper, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Liam watched the landscape change, each mile putting more distance between him and the shattered remnants of his life. He felt a faint, almost imperceptible easing of the suffocating pressure in his chest. Ethan's cabin was exactly as he described, rustic, secluded, and utterly peaceful. Tucked away amidst a grove of ancient fir trees, it was a small wooden structure with a wide, welcoming porch overlooking a pristine mountain lake. Inside, it was simple but cozy, with a stone fireplace, a worn armchair, and a small functional kitchen. There was no Wi-Fi, and his phone signal was spotty at best. A blessing in disguise, Liam realized. He needed to disconnect. He spent the first few days in a haze, the quiet solitude amplifying the echoes of his pain. He would wake with a start, the betrayal fresh in his mind, and spend hours staring out at the lake, the silence broken only by the chirping of crickets or the rustle of leaves in the wind. He tried to read, but the words blurred. He tried to sketch some new designs, but the joy had vanished from his hands. The phone calls from his parents, full of sympathy and concern, felt distant, almost unreal. Only Ethan's occasional texts, short and to the point, felt grounding. On the fifth morning, Ethan called. "Liam, you can't stay cooped up there forever," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "It's time to get some fresh air. You need to do something. Anything. Even if it's just a hike." Liam had barely left the cabin since the day Chloe told him everything. Every time he thought about leaving, the weight of it all would sink in again, the betrayal, the lies, the shattered future. But Ethan was right. He couldn't hide from it forever. And as much as he wanted to stay cocooned in his grief, the world was still turning. He couldn't stop it. "Okay, Ethan," he said, his voice raspy. I'll go for a walk." He hung up and slowly pulled on a light jacket. Stepping out onto the porch, he took a deep, shaky breath. The air was cool and clean, carrying the earthy scent of pine and damp soil. He started walking, following a narrow dirt path that wound through the trees towards the lake. The sounds of nature slowly began to penetrate the fog in his mind, the chirping of birds, the rustle of leaves, the distant murmur of the wind through the pines. He walked for what felt like hours, his legs aching, his mind slowly clearing. He found himself by a small, secluded waterfall, its water cascading over smooth, moss-covered rocks. He sat down on a large boulder, watching the water flow, mesmerized by its steady, relentless movement. It kept going, no matter what. It didn't stop for anything. For the first time in days, Liam allowed himself to simply be. The cool air, the sound of the water, the gentle rustle of the trees. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He didn't have all the answers yet. He wasn't fixed. But for a few minutes, he could just exist, unburdened by the weight of his shattered past. As he stood up to leave, he felt a small flicker of hope faint, but there. He had taken the first step. And that, for now, was enough. The quiet solitude of Ethan's cabin in the Rocky Mountains, initially a suffocating blanket, slowly began to transform into a gentle cocoon. Liam had spent the first few days in a haze, the vast, silent expanse of the mountain lake outside amplifying the echoes of his pain. He would wake with a start, the betrayal by Chloe, fresh in his mind, and spend hours staring out at the water, the silence broken only by the chirping of crickets or the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. He tried to read, but the words blurred. He tried to sketch some new designs, but the joy had vanished from his hands, replaced by a leaden apathy. The phone calls from his parents, full of sympathy and concern, felt distant, almost unreal. Only Ethan's occasional texts, short and to the point, felt grounding, a tether to a world he felt increasingly disconnected from. He knew he couldn't stay in this state of suspended animation forever. The emotional weight of everything that had happened was crushing, but a faint, persistent whisper in the back of his mind urged him forward. He had to find a way to cope, to rebuild, to reclaim some semblance of himself. The cabin, though remote, was a sanctuary, a place where the constant hum of Denver's urban development and the bitter memory of Summit designs felt miles away. On the fifth morning, Ethan called, his voice gentle but firm. "Liam, you can't stay cooped up there forever," he said. "It's time to get some fresh air. You need to do something, anything. Even if it's just a hike or... Remember those old wooden carving tools Dad used to have? I think they're still in the shed at the back of the cabin." Liam had barely left the cabin since the day Chloe told him everything. Every time he thought about leaving, the weight of it all would sink in again: the betrayal, the lies, the shattered future. But Ethan was right. He couldn't hide from it forever. And as much as he wanted to stay cocooned in his grief, the world was still turning. He couldn't stop it. He reluctantly agreed, and after a quick, uninspired breakfast, he ventured out to the small, dusty shed behind the cabin. True to Ethan's word, tucked away in a forgotten corner, was a wooden box labeled Grandpa's Tools. He pulled it out, blowing off layers of dust, and carried it back into the cabin. He set the box on the small, worn wooden table in the living room. Inside were an array of chisels, gouges, and knives, each with a smooth, well-worn handle. There was also a small, unfinished block of cedar. His hands, accustomed to the swift, precise movements of drafting and CAD software, felt clumsy as he picked up a chisel. He remembered watching his grandfather, a quiet, patient man, carve intricate birds and small animals from blocks of wood. It had always seemed like magic. The initial few hours were a frustrating mess. The wood resisted his clumsy attempts, splintering in unexpected directions. The chisel slipped, leaving jagged marks. His hands, usually so adept, felt thick and uncoordinated. He was stiff, unsure of his movements. The block of cedar, instead of transforming into something beautiful, seemed to mock his once sharp precision. But there was something freeing about it. For the first time in weeks, Liam allowed himself to focus on something that wasn't heartbreak. With each failed cut, each splintered edge, he released a tiny bit of the anger that had built up over the past few months. His betrayal, his heartbreak, the endless loops of thoughts about Chloe, all of it started to get quieter. Each carefully applied stroke, each slow scrape of the blade, felt like a step away from the emotional paralysis that had held him captive. He lost track of time. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the mountain peaks in hues of orange and purple, and still, Liam hunched over the table, a small desk lamp casting a focused beam on his work. He wasn't designing a building, wasn't optimizing a complex structure, wasn't building a multi-million-dollar firm. He was simply carving. And in that simplicity, he found a strange, unexpected solace. The next morning, he woke with a faint ache in his wrists and shoulders, but his mind felt surprisingly clear. He immediately returned to the carving. He found himself thinking differently, approaching the problem not with the abstract logic of architecture, but with the tactile, physical reality of wood grain and resistance. He started over, meticulously studying the block, feeling its contours, imagining the form hidden within. He began to understand that it wasn't about forcing the wood, but about coaxing it, working with its natural tendencies. He worked for hours, the silence of the cabin punctuated only by the faint scrape of tools and the occasional sigh of concentration. He discovered a rhythm to it that felt familiar, echoing the meditative focus he once found in the flow state of design. His hands, once clumsy, began to respond, becoming more precise, more confident. The frustration was still there, a persistent hum beneath the surface, but it was no longer overwhelming. It was a challenge, a puzzle to be solved, not a personal failing. The sting in his fingers from a slipped chisel didn't matter anymore. The ache in his back was nothing compared to the emotional weight he'd been carrying. He had to keep moving forward. This, he thought, was a small way to start. By the time the sun began to set again, a rudimentary bird began to emerge from the cedar block. It was lopsided, its wings uneven, and its head a bit too large. But it was his. He smoothed its rough edges with sandpaper he found in the shed, feeling the warm, fragrant wood beneath his fingertips. A small, genuine smile touched Liam's lips. He had done it. He had created something. Something tangible. Something that worked. Something that brought form from a shapeless block. It wasn't that his problems had disappeared, but for the first time in a while he felt like he had control. Even if it was only for a moment, the weight on his shoulders had lifted. Just a little. That evening, Ethan called. "How was your day, Liam?" he asked, his voice light. I carved a bird," Liam admitted, a faint smile on his face. "It's not perfect, but it's a bird," Ethan chuckled. "See? I told you. You have to find those things again, Liam. You can't spend all your time looking back at what you lost. There's still a lot in front of you. What's next?" Liam looked at the small wooden bird, then out at the dark expanse of the lake. "I don't know," he said, but this time the words weren't laced with despair. "But I think I want to carve something else, something new." He felt a small flicker of hope faint, but there. He had taken the first step, and that, for now, was enough. He was beginning to see that the world was still full of beauty, even when his own had been shattered. The weeks that followed Liam's small triumph with the rudimentary wooden bird felt like a slow, deliberate recalibration of his internal compass. The initial high of seeing form emerge from the shapeless cedar block had faded, but it left behind something more enduring, a quiet curiosity, a nascent desire to understand how things truly worked, beyond the abstract layers of architectural design. He had spent years building grand structures, intricate blueprints, but the tangible reality of wood grain and chisel offered a different kind of satisfaction. It was raw, immediate, and undeniably real. He continued to carve, refining his strokes, experimenting with different types of wood he found during his hikes. He wasn't aiming for perfection, just understanding. He ordered a few basic woodworking books online, old dog-eared tomes that smelled of sawdust and forgotten knowledge. He devoured them, his mind, once accustomed to the rapid-fire logic of structural equations, now slowing down, absorbing the fundamental principles of joinery, grain direction, and the subtle art of coaxing beauty from raw material. The frustration was still a constant companion. Slipped chisels, unexpected splinters, pieces that stubbornly refused to take the desired shape, but it no longer felt like a personal attack. It was part of the process, a challenge to be overcome, a problem to be solved. The cabin, once a symbol of his isolation, became his workshop. The worn wooden table, previously a place for uninspired meals, was now covered in wood shavings, chisels, and the faint, sweet scent of cedar. He started small, carving simple forms, smooth river stones, abstract shapes, and more birds, each slightly less lopsided than the last. Each successful piece, no matter how minor, was a small victory against the overwhelming sense of helplessness that had once consumed him. It was a tangible proof that he could still create, still build, still make something work. His physical routine also settled into a rhythm. The hikes along the mountain trails became longer, more purposeful. He started noticing the intricate details of the forest ecosystem, the way sunlight filtered through the canopy, the resilient growth of wildflowers clinging to rocky outcrops, the silent, enduring strength of the natural world. He'd often find himself sitting by the lake, sketching new carving ideas in a small notebook, the rhythmic lapping of the water a soothing backdrop to his thoughts. The constant hum of Denver's urban development and the bitter memory of Summit designs felt not just miles away, but light years distant. Ethan's calls became less about checking in on his emotional state and more about genuine curiosity regarding his new projects. He'd listen patiently as Liam excitedly described the intricacies of a wood joint or the challenges of finding the perfect piece of timber. Ethan even sent him a few old decommissioned carpentry tools from his own garage, a treasure trove of saws, planes, and clamps that kept him busy for days. His quiet support, devoid of judgment or expectations, was a lifeline. One particularly crisp afternoon, with the sun glinting off the snow-capped peaks, Liam was attempting to carve a more complex piece, a small, stylized mountain lion. He had been struggling with the details of the face, a challenging curve that defied all his attempts to capture its essence. He was hunched over the workbench, his brow furrowed in concentration, when a knock echoed through the cabin. He straightened up, surprised. Visitors were rare, especially this deep into the woods. He opened the door to find a woman standing on his porch, bundled in a thick fleece jacket, but smiling. She was in her late 30s, with warm, intelligent eyes and a neatly braided brown hair. She held a large, worn sketchbook and a thermos. "Hi, sorry to bother you," she said, her voice clear and friendly. "My name's Clara. I'm an artist. My car broke down about a mile back on the main road. Saw your light on. Any chance you have a phone I could use? Mine's completely dead." Liam hesitated for a moment, his hermit-like routine momentarily disrupted. Then, remembering Ethan's insistence on connection, he stepped aside. "Come in, it's cold out there. My phone signal is pretty spotty here, but you're welcome to try. I'm Liam." Clara stepped inside, stamping snow from her boots. "Thanks, Liam. It's a lifesaver. I was out sketching, trying to get some shots of the winter light, and then my old clunker decided to give up the ghost." She gestured to her sketchbook. "I'm a landscape artist, mostly oils and watercolors." As Clara tried his phone, getting only a faint, flickering signal, her eyes landed on his workbench. Her eyebrows rose in surprise. "Wow, what is all this? Are you a sculptor?" she asked, a respectful glint in her eyes. Liam chuckled, a genuine, unforced sound that surprised even himself. "Not quite, just trying my hand at some wood carving. It's a new hobby. A very frustrating one sometimes." Clara walked closer, her curiosity piqued. "That's amazing. My grandfather used to carve. He had a whole workshop in his barn. I always found it so cool, the idea of revealing the form hidden within the wood." She picked up a small, unfinished bird, examining it with genuine interest. "You know, there's a small community of local artists here in Estes Park. We have a weekly gathering at the old community center. We share techniques, critique each other's work. You might find it interesting." The suggestion hit Liam with unexpected force. A community, other people who understood this strange new world he was exploring. He had been so focused on solitary creation, on rebuilding himself in isolation, that the idea of connecting with others felt both daunting and incredibly appealing. I hadn't thought about that," Liam admitted, feeling a faint blush creep up his neck. The thought of stepping back into a social setting, even a small one, after Chloe's betrayal, was terrifying. But the idea of refining his craft, of learning from others, was a stronger pull. Clara smiled. "It's a friendly bunch, and they love new blood, especially someone who's actually creating things, not just talking about it." She finally got a faint signal on his phone and quickly dialed a tow truck. "Looks like I'll be here a while. Mind if I wait it out?" "Not at all," Liam said, a new sense of anticipation stirring within him. He found himself explaining the challenges of carving the mountain lion, the stubbornness of the wood, the elusive nature of capturing its spirit. Clara listened intently, offering thoughtful questions and sharing anecdotes about her own struggles with light and shadow in her paintings. For the first time in a long time, Liam felt truly engaged in a conversation that wasn't about his past or his pain, but about shared interest and genuine creative challenge. By the time the tow truck arrived, hours later, the sun was setting, painting the mountains in fiery hues. Clara thanked him profusely, her eyes sparkling. "It was really great meeting you, Liam. You should definitely check out that art group. Tell them Clara sent you." She scribbled down an address and a time on a napkin. "And maybe, if you're ever looking for someone to sketch your designs or just want to explore the trails, let me know." She offered a warm, genuine smile. Liam found himself smiling back, a feeling of lightness he hadn't felt in months. "I'll think about it, Clara. Thanks." As he watched her disappear into the fading light, Liam looked down at the napkin in his hand. The address for the artists' group. A small, seemingly insignificant piece of paper, but it felt like a new blueprint, a clear path cutting through the static of his isolation. He didn't have all the answers yet. He wasn't fixed. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a genuine pull towards something beyond the cabin walls. The world, he was beginning to realize, was still full of beauty, waiting to be found and shaped. The napkin with Clara's hurried scribble felt like a compass pointing to an unknown destination. Artists Group. Estes Park Community Center. Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Liam stared at it for days, the simple words holding a weight disproportionate to their ink. The idea of joining a community, of intentionally stepping back into a social sphere after the isolating trauma of Chloe's betrayal, was terrifying. His instinct was to retreat, to continue his solitary pursuit of wood and chisel within the safe confines of the cabin. Yet, the persistent challenge of carving the mountain lion, the very problem Clara had suggested the group could help with, gnawed at him. More than that, a nascent curiosity, a flicker of something akin to excitement, began to stir. He was building, yes, but he was building alone. What if there was more to learn, more to experience, beyond the walls of his self-imposed sanctuary? The Tuesday arrived, cloaked in a typical mountain chill. Liam found himself dressed in a clean, but still slightly wrinkled flannel shirt, feeling a nervous flutter in his stomach that reminded him of his first big architectural presentation. He drove the short distance to Estes Park, the familiar winding roads feeling less like an escape route and more like a path forward. The old community center was a quaint, unassuming building, its windows glowing with a warm, inviting light. He took a deep breath, pushed open the heavy wooden door, and stepped inside. The room was a vibrant hum of activity, the soft scratch of charcoal on paper, the gentle swish of a paintbrush, the quiet murmur of voices. A dozen or so people, ranging from seasoned painters with paint-stained hands to eager young sketch artists, were huddled around easels, tables laden with canvases, clay, and various art supplies. A few looked up as he entered, offering polite, curious nods. He spotted Clara almost immediately, her neatly braided hair a beacon near a table piled high with vibrant watercolor landscapes. She saw him and her face lit up, a genuine, welcoming smile spreading across her lips. "Liam, you made it!" she exclaimed, walking over, her eyes sparkling. "I wasn't sure you would. Welcome to the Estes Park Artists Collective." She gestured around the room. "This is where the magic happens. Or, at least, where we try to make it happen." Liam felt a faint blush creep up his neck, but her warmth was disarming. "Thanks for the invite, Clara. It's a lot." "It is," she agreed, a knowing glint in her eyes. "But it's a good kind of lot. Come on, I'll introduce you to some of the regulars." She led him around the room, introducing him to a collection of eccentric and passionate individuals. There was old Mr. Peterson, a retired art teacher who spoke in gentle, encouraging tones and had a vast collection of paintbrushes. There was Alex, a quiet high school student who was surprisingly adept at digital art. And there was Maria, a warm, energetic potter who specialized in abstract ceramic sculptures. They all shared a common language, the language of form, color, texture, and the endless possibilities of creative expression. Liam found himself drawn to Maria, who was meticulously shaping a piece of clay into an organic, flowing form. "So, you're the new wood carver Clara was talking about?" Maria asked, her voice soft but friendly. "Heard you're struggling with a mountain lion?" Liam nodded, grateful for the directness. He pulled out his small notebook, filled with his sketches and frustrated notes. "Yeah, it's the face, a challenging curve that I just can't seem to capture. It feels elusive." Maria peered at his sketch, her brow furrowed in concentration. She pointed to a section with a clay-dusted finger. "See this line here? You're trying to force the curve. For an animal's face, especially one with that kind of power, you need to think about the underlying bone structure. The strength comes from within, not from the surface. Try to feel the weight, the tension in the form, before you even start to carve the details." It was a simple observation, a fundamental principle Liam had overlooked in his analytical approach. The realization hit him with a jolt of clarity. He had been so focused on the external, on the precise lines and angles, that he had missed the internal, the essence of the form. It was a humbling moment, but also incredibly liberating. The solution was so obvious, so elegant. "Of course," Liam muttered, feeling a surge of excitement. "Why didn't I think of that?" Maria chuckled. "We all miss the obvious sometimes, especially when we're too close to the problem. That's why we have this group. Different eyes, different perspectives. And sometimes you need to feel it, not just see it." For the rest of the evening, Liam found himself deeply engaged. He discussed his projects, asked questions, and listened intently as others shared their own challenges and triumphs. He learned about color theory, composition, and the art of expressing emotion through form. It wasn't just about fixing his mountain lion, it was about expanding his understanding, connecting with a broader world of knowledge and shared passion. The conversations flowed effortlessly, and Liam found himself more animated than he had been in a long time. For the first time, he felt that old fire return, the same fire he had felt when he first conceptualized Union Station Annex, when everything was new and exciting. But this time, it was different. It was a fire fueled by collaboration, not just individual ambition. Later in the evening, as the group began to wind down, Liam found himself chatting with Clara. "You were right," he said, a genuine smile on his face. "They're a friendly bunch, and Maria, she helped me figure out that curve. It was a simple shift in perspective, but I never would have seen it on my own." Clara smiled, her eyes twinkling. "I knew you'd fit right in. You've been carrying this weight around for so long, Liam. Maybe it's time to let some of it go. You're finding a new way to create, a new way to connect, and a new way to learn." The words hit him harder than he expected. It was true. He had been so focused on building a future, on proving himself, that he had forgotten to live in the moment, to seek out collaboration, to embrace the joy of shared discovery. He had been so consumed with the idea of fixing what was broken within himself that he had ignored the simple joy of creating something new, something entirely his own, with the help of others. As he drove back to the cabin, the mountain roads felt different. The chill had cleared, and the moonlight illuminated the path ahead. The silence of the cabin, once oppressive, now felt peaceful, filled with the hum of new ideas and the echoes of friendly voices. He immediately went to his workbench, picked up the mountain lion, and began to carve again. This time, his hands moved with a newfound confidence, guided by Maria's words. The elusive curve began to take shape, revealing the inherent strength of the form. A wave of profound satisfaction washed over him. It was in this moment, under the quiet glow of his workbench lamp, that Liam realized something significant. His life, though scarred, was not over. It was just beginning. The path wasn't clear, but for the first time, he felt a genuine sense of direction, guided not by ambition alone, but by a deeper, more authentic connection to himself and the world around him. The static in his life was finally clearing, making way for a new, clearer blueprint. The months that followed Liam's integration into the Estes Park Artists Collective felt like a new chapter in his life, a profound shift in how he approached both his craft and his personal relationships. The intensity that had once consumed him, the relentless pursuit of perfection in grand architectural designs, had mellowed. It was replaced by a steady sense of purpose and balance, a quiet confidence rooted in authenticity. He had learned to set clear boundaries, not just with his time, but with his emotional energy, committing to living with intention, something he had never truly done before. His small workshop in the cabin, once a solitary refuge, now buzzed with a different kind of energy. He was no longer just carving for himself. Inspired by the collective, he started taking on small commissions for local galleries and private collectors. Intricate animal sculptures, unique furniture pieces crafted from reclaimed mountain wood, and even custom architectural models for local businesses, but with a focus on sustainable materials, an artistic flair that was distinctly his. His reputation as the artisan architect grew, and with it, a quiet sense of pride that felt far more fulfilling than any major building project. He wasn't just shaping wood. He was shaping connections, building bridges within his new community. That Friday evening, as Liam meticulously sanded the final details of a large, flowing river otter sculpture, he felt an overwhelming sense of satisfaction. His tools were clean, his wood scraps neatly organized, and he had carved out time to meet with Clara for dinner, something that had become a cherished ritual. It was a far cry from the days when design marathons had kept him tethered to his desk long after the sun had set. He stood up, stretched, and smiled to himself. He felt different. He was different. And for the first time in years, Liam felt like he was truly living his life, not just surviving it. Clara had been a steady source of support through this transition. She understood his passion for creating, the deep satisfaction he found in bringing old wood to life, but she also knew the importance of finding peace in the process. She had become Liam's anchor, someone who didn't just stand by him, but someone who actively helped him grow and challenged him when he needed it. Their connection had deepened into a quiet, profound love, built on shared moments of artistic exploration, laughter, and vulnerability. They spent weekends hiking the mountain trails, Clara capturing the rugged beauty with her paints and sketches while Liam searched for unique pieces of fallen timber, envisioning the forms hidden within. Liam had learned to be more present with her. Their conversations were no longer overshadowed by the ghosts of his past or the anxieties of his future. He listened, truly listened, to her stories about her landscape commissions, her dreams of exhibiting her work in larger galleries. He shared his own discoveries from the artist collective, the satisfaction of a perfectly sculpted form, the camaraderie of fellow creators. They still had their individual goals, but they were also learning how to grow together, weaving their lives into a rich tapestry. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when Liam still found himself slipping back into old habits, losing track of time as he worked late into the night on a particularly stubborn piece. But he had come a long way. That particular evening, Clara was waiting for him at their favorite local spot, a cozy farm-to-table restaurant in downtown Estes Park. Liam hadn't seen her in a few days, as he had been caught up in a complex commission for a large, custom-carved sign for a new boutique hotel. But he made a promise to himself that tonight would be about them, not work. He walked into the restaurant, and there she was, sitting at their usual table by the window, the soft glow of the bistro lights illuminating her face. Clara looked up and smiled, the warmth in her expression making Liam's heart beat a little faster. He walked over to her, leaning down to kiss her on the cheek before sitting across from her. "Hey, you," Liam said, smiling back at her. "I missed you." Clara's eyes softened. "I missed you too. How's the hotel sign coming along?" Liam leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "Finished it today. It was a beast, a lot of intricate detail, but I'm getting better at managing the workload. Learning to take it slow and not let it consume me." "That's good to hear," Clara said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "You've been so focused lately, but it's nice to see you more balanced. You're here, with me, right now. I appreciate that." Liam felt a rush of gratitude in that moment. He had struggled so much with finding balance before, with feeling like he had to prove something to the world, to Chloe, to himself. But now, with Clara by his side, he realized that it was okay to slow down, to not always be chasing the next big thing. What he had, right here, was enough. They ordered their food, and the evening passed with easy conversation, laughter, and quiet moments. For Liam, it was a profound reminder that life wasn't just about what you accomplished. It was about who you shared it with. And tonight, with Clara, he was reminded of that truth in a way he hadn't been in years. The betrayal had stripped him bare, but it had also cleared the way for something more authentic, more fulfilling. The next few months brought even more growth for Liam, both personally and professionally. His custom woodworking and art business continued to thrive, but now he felt more in control of it. He was taking on more challenging commissions, speaking at regional art fairs, and gaining recognition beyond Estes Park. He had even started mentoring a few young artists from the collective, passing on the lessons he had learned the hard way, not just about carving, but about resilience and finding one's true path. But it wasn't just about work anymore. Liam had made an effort to reconnect with his family and old friends from Denver, some of whom he had distanced himself from during his intense focus on summit designs. He realized how much he had missed their company, their laughter, and their grounding presence. They had been there for him before the success, before the betrayals, and before everything that had come crashing down. Now, they were part of the new chapter of his life where he was learning to be more present, more open, and more vulnerable. One afternoon, after a successful workshop at the collective, Liam received a text from his old university friend David, asking if he wanted to meet up for a hike near Boulder. David had been a constant throughout Liam's life, someone who had been through thick and thin with him. Though they had drifted apart after college, their bond had never truly faded. Liam smiled at the message, eager to reconnect. It was another step forward, another piece of his life falling into place. They met at a trailhead near Chautauqua Park. David was already there, stretching, his usual easygoing smile on his face. "There he is," David said, standing up to give Liam a warm handshake. "The mountain sculptor. You look different, man. More at peace somehow." Liam laughed, feeling the weight of David's words settle in. "Yeah, I guess I am. Took me a while to figure it out, but I'm getting there." David gestured for him to start walking. "So, tell me everything. I heard you've been doing some amazing things with wood. And I see you're spending time with Clara more, huh?" Liam nodded. "Yeah, things have changed. I'm learning how to juggle it all. Not just work, but life. Clara's been incredible through all of this." I've realized I need more than just professional success. I need balance, and I've started rebuilding that. David raised his water bottle. To balance. I always thought you'd be too driven to slow down, but I'm proud of you, man. You're finally getting it right. They spent the next few hours hiking, reminiscing about university days, catching up on life, and talking about their respective careers. It felt good to reconnect, to know that even in the midst of everything Liam had been through, he still had these roots, these friendships that kept him grounded. As the evening wound down, Liam found himself driving back to the cabin, his heart light. It wasn't about the success or the recognition. It was about the people he loved, the relationships that sustained him through everything. And Clara, who had been by his side from the beginning of this journey, was at the center of it all. That night, as they sat on the porch of the cabin, watching the stars emerge over the mountain lake, Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "You've come so far, Liam. I'm proud of you." Liam smiled, his arm wrapping around her. "I couldn't have done it without you. You've helped me see what really matters. And for that, I'm grateful." They sat in comfortable silence, the weight of the world no longer pressing on Liam's chest. He was exactly where he needed to be. And for the first time in a long time, he realized that the future wasn't something to chase, it was something to live, right here, right now, with the people who truly mattered. The masterpiece of his life, once shattered, was now being sculpted anew, more beautiful and resilient than ever before.